Growing up, there were three things that I felt like were inevitable, and those were death, taxes, and Ash and Pikachu being the main protagonists of the Pokemon anime. But as we found out earlier this year, that's not actually the case. Ash and Pikachu's journey is coming to a close on March 24th, 2023. And even now saying it is just a little surreal, since as a kid I used to watch this show religiously. Every Saturday morning I would be wide awake watching the newest episode. After school I would be coming home, turning on TV and watching the reruns that they would be showing. And it became almost like a culture for my generation. And that's the kids from the late 90s. Everybody watched it. Every kid knew about Pokemon and everyone was following the anime. And since then, the anime has had its ups and downs. A lot of people obviously fell off, either because they grew up or because they kind of got bored with the show. I remember I watched up until Generation 3, which was the Ruby and Sapphire season. And I remember feeling like the stories were kind of getting a little repetitive and the character development just wasn't there. I also just got a little tired of watching Ash constantly lose in the Pokemon League. He would collect the 8 badges in the region, he would get to the big tournament and he would lose pretty early on. And yeah, I kind of stopped watching around that time. And I also kind of didn't like the fact that they switched voice actors, and that was a whole nother thing, but that's just one thing that I couldn't get over. And since then, Ash has been continuing his journey. He went to several other regions. He went to Sinnoh, went to the tournament in the Pokemon League, lost. He went to Unova, went to the Pokemon League, lost. He went to Kalos, went to the Pokemon League, lost. However, in that season, he apparently got very close. He got to the finals where he lost there to a trainer with a Mega Charizard. And I remember the discourse on the internet during that time was that everyone thought Ash was going to win. They were convinced that he was going to win that season. And, I remember hearing it and I kind of brushed it off. I was like, there's no way he's going to win. Pokemon in the anime, they're never going to let him win, because if they let him win, then he's kind of reached his goal. He's become the Pokemon master. And obviously, he lost in that season and a lot of people were disappointed. And I kind of just sat back and said, well, what did you expect? But then when he went to Alola, the Generation 7 region, he actually won. And everyone was freaking out about that. There was a bit of a caveat to that, since that region technically never had a fully established Pokemon League. So it mirrored the games where he was kind of going across this region, and the region was building its Pokemon League. So he was the very first champion in the Alola region. So everyone then started saying, oh, well, does this mean that Ash and Pikachu are no longer going to be in the show? No, not necessarily, since Generation 8 came around and Ash was still the main character. But the Generation 8 season did take a turn where he didn't go through the region of Galar. He instead went across all the previous regions as well. There was just all over the place story, and from what I understand, he didn't collect the badges like he did in the previous regions. Instead, he was trying to build up his rank in order to fight in the World Championships. And this was the tournament of all the tournaments. He would be facing off against all the other champions of all the other regions. And since he won in the Alola region, he's considered a champion. Now, a lot of people also thought this was it. Everyone thought that this was where he was going to become the world champion and he was going to be the very best, like no one ever was. And I didn't really pay too much attention to it. But, I kind of just followed along from what I heard on the internet, on Twitter, and things like that. And as the show progressed and as Ash got closer and closer to getting to this final battle against Leon, I didn't really know what to think, to be honest. I thought, okay, well, if he loses, then that's kind of a slap to the face to all the fans, and it's a little bit of a slap to the face to Ash as a character. Like, he keeps training and hitting these milestones, and then he like takes one step forward and two steps back in a way. But no, he ended up beating Leon and he won, and everyone made a big deal about it again, kind of on the same realm as when he won in Alola. But this time he became the world champion. Like, he beat all the other champions. He beat Leon, he beat Cynthia, he beat Steven, he beat Lance. Like, he got them all. I personally thought, okay, they made him the world champion, that's great. Now they're just gonna kind of continue his story. He's gonna decide to go to Paldea and compete there. They're gonna figure out some kind of story for him. But I did not expect for them to actually retire him as a character. And this is where we are today. They announced back in the beginning of the year that there was going to be an 11 episode arc with him and Pikachu, kind of like a farewell season. And similarly to the previous several years of Pokemon, I've just been keeping up with it through discourse and some videos online kind of summarizing the episodes. But this is it. The last episode is titled something along the lines of The Rainbow and the Pokemon Master. So for anyone who isn't aware, the very first episode of this anime was after Ash had went on this little adventure with his Pikachu that he just obtained from Professor Oak. He spots a Ho-Oh in the sky flying across, and he says something like, "Oh, I'm gonna make sure I see every single Pokemon, and that's gonna be my journey to become the Pokemon Master." And then you never see of Ho-Oh ever again, at least not in the anime from what I remember anyways. But this title, The Rainbow and the Pokemon Master, pretty much tells me that Ho-Oh is gonna make an appearance. And I kind of love things like that. I love when stories, they come full circle in a way. It's like the perfect book ending to this quest of his, and I really, really hope that he either catches Ho-Oh or he like gets on its back and flies off into the sunset, and that's like the last shot of the whole show. I don't know. I really want them to do something, because despite how I felt with the show after I dropped it, despite how a lot of people feel about it in general, how they feel about Ash as a character, there's a whole generation that grew up on it, and that's something that doesn't happen very often. The show lasted about 25, 26 years, and now it's coming to an end, and it's a little sad, but it's also really satisfying to see something that I started watching as a kid finally come to an end in such a way. It wasn't just like, it wasn't a meaningless quest that he was on. It actually meant something, because after a point I felt like everything I watched didn't mean anything. Like, he was just never gonna succeed. He was just going to go to a new region, compete, collect egg badges, and lose at the end, and then restart over and over. But they actually gave this character a purpose, and I'm very happy about that. So that being said, let me know down in the comments below how you feel about the Pokemon anime ending. Are you sad? Are you happy? Are you excited for the next show to start with the two new protagonists? I'm gonna check it out, but obviously I think Ash and Pikachu are the OGs, and I don't think there will ever be a show that can replace them. But if this new one comes very close to it, I'll be happy with that. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll catch you next time. See ya.